I've taken an interest in Chrystul Kizer's case because hers runs parallel to Kyle's in many ways. They're both being charged with murder in the state of Wisconsin, actually first-degree intentional homicide. Both of them were the same age, 17 years old. Both of them used guns. Kyle had an AR-15 and she had a handgun, and both are claiming self-defense. And so I have publicized her case on occasion and even posted at one point a webpage for people to donate to her legal defense fund, and I will post that again for this one. So I started looking at this a little bit deeper. I'm afraid that Chrystul Kizer might be in a little bit more trouble than I originally thought. Hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With his powerful brainwaves cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnnie Walker Dread to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's the Johnnie Walker Dread Show.
Okay, so let me go ahead and read this web page here. This is from September 14th, 2020, and this is from Kenosha News, and it sort of clarifies in my mind why things were dragging along the way they were. Again, I haven't really paid much attention to this case as I should have, but let's go ahead and read this. This is titled, Wisconsin Department of Justice Disputes That Kizer Was Trafficking Victim. Okay, so September 14th, 2020. In a brief filed in an appeal on her case, the Wisconsin Department of Justice is disputing that Chrystul Kizer was the victim of trafficking by Rnadall Volar III at the time she is alleged to have killed him. Kizer, 20, is charged with first-degree intentional homicide for the shooting death of Volar, 34, in 2018. By the way, Chrystul is a black female, Rnadall Volar is a white male. I realize I shouldn't have to mention that, but it's going to color everybody's views on this thing, so we might as well go ahead and get it out in the open. Volar had been under investigation for child trafficking at the time of his death, alleged to have been having sex with underage girls, including Kizer. During the investigation, police seized video Volar had made showing him having sex with girls, but the state had yet to charge him when he was killed. Okay, so if they had just moved a little faster, old Randall might still be alive today. Kizer's defense attorneys hope to use a provision in state law allowing a... Okay, so let me go ahead and explain a little bit more about it because I'm not sure they're going to get to it. Chrystul Kizer is underage. She's 17, and her claim is that she was a victim of sex trafficking by Rnadall Volar. And there seems to be pretty good evidence to suggest that is the case, unlike what I'm reading here so far. Now, she shot Rnadall Volar with a gun and then tried to burn the house down to cover the evidence. And then she also stole his car and then tried to give it to her brother. The state's view is that this was all premeditated, that in fact she was really out for the car and killed him for it and then made up the claim about sex trafficking to cover the crime. We don't know. I mean, we haven't got the evidence in front of us yet, so we'll have to wait and see once the trial begins. Kyle's defense attorneys hope to use a provision in state law allowing an affirmative defense for trafficking victims, essentially allowing them to argue she cannot be convicted because she killed Volar as a result of her trafficking. At the circuit court level, Judge David Wilk ruled that Kizer could not use the affirmative defense for the homicide charge. Wow. Okay, so just to be clear, this is not the affirmative defense that you typically see in self-defense cases, where the affirmative defense is that you admit that you killed the person, but the person was inflicting or was going to inflict serious bodily injury on you. Okay? She's making the affirmative defense that she killed Rnadall Volar because it was connected to a sex trafficking incident. Okay, and we'll read the Wisconsin law on this here in a moment. The prosecution is on hold while that issue is being considered by the Court of Appeal. So this is the reason why this thing has been dragging for so long. Remember that she was arrested about a year before Kyle was. And you got to wonder, like, why hasn't this thing even gone to trial yet? Well, this is why. We believe that the judge read the statute much too narrowly, said Colleen Marion, one of the defense attorneys handling the appeal. We think it is really clear that the legislature wanted to make a strong statement that victims of trafficking need to be treated as victims. Okay, now I'm going to disagree with this lawyer here in a moment, and I think that the legal team may have made a mistake here. The affirmative defense for trafficking victims has never been used in a homicide case, and we're going to find out why here in a moment. If the appellate court allows the defense, it would not mean that Kizer could not be convicted of the homicide, only that her attorneys could use the defense as an argument at trial. The jury would then make a final decision on whether it absolved her of the killing. By the way, the headline here is very misleading. They're not saying here inside the body of it that she was not a victim of human trafficking. Let's go back to the title. Wisconsin Department of Justice disputes that Kizer was trafficking victim. No, the Wisconsin DOJ is not making that claim. What they're claiming is that simply being a trafficking victim does not entitle one to use self-defense. Now, you'll see here why in a moment. What are the Wisconsin statutes in question? Well, we go to 939.46, coercion. There are two major sections here that we have to read. The other ones don't apply. Okay, let's take a look at number 1. A threat by a person other than the actor's co-conspirator, which causes the actor reasonably to believe that his or her act is the only means of preventing imminent death or great bodily harm to the actor or another, and which causes him or her so to act, is a defense to a prosecution for any crime based on that act, except that if the prosecution is for first-degree intentional homicide, and that's what she's being charged with, the degree of the crime is reduced to second-degree intentional homicide. Now, at first, I thought that's what she was going to be claiming, that Rnadall Volar was attacking her and that she had to use lethal force to get him to stop. Okay? It doesn't sound like it, though. It sounds like she's leaning on 1M. Let's read that. A victim of a violation of section 940.302 or 948.051, I read those. It's just basically defining sex trafficking and sex trafficking of minors, has an affirmative defense for any offense committed as a direct result of these violations. Now, an affirmative defense, what does that mean? Even though she is claiming that the elements of murder she committed, in other words, she's agreeing that, yes, I did shoot him, and if you look at the elements of first-degree intentional homicide, she's making the claim that, yes, each of those things is valid. There are mitigating circumstances that make it to where I am not guilty of that crime. That's what an affirmative defense is. But here's the catch, and this is what I think has gotten her into so much trouble. It says, you can maintain an affirmative defense for any offense, like shooting, killing, things like that, committed as a direct result of the violation of these statutes. In other words, as a direct result of the trafficking. Now, the other part here, without regard to whether anyone was prosecuted or convicted, Rnadall Volar was shot before he could be prosecuted for his crimes, so they're basically saying it doesn't matter. Now, what was the intent of 1M? Well, I think the biggest intent of this was for drug charges. So, for example, let's suppose that you're carrying drugs around and the police bust you, you're a prostitute, and you were coerced into carrying those drugs by your human trafficker. They would basically say that you have an affirmative defense. In other words, you can claim that, yes, I did traffic drugs, I did have the drugs in my possession, I met all the elements of that crime. However, because I was coerced into it by a human trafficker, I am not guilty of that crime. The trouble is that they're trying to apply this to the case of Rnadall Volar. This is murder. And again, it said in the news article that this had never been applied to a murder case, and I think I see why. In my view, this element here was never meant for the case where you're killing your pimp. Okay, so what they're trying to claim is this. Rnadall Volar is a sex trafficker, and there's no doubt that Chrystul Kizer, in my opinion, is a victim of human trafficking. Does that give her the right to kill him? Well, what they're basically saying here is that the act of killing was a direct result of the human trafficking, and I don't think that the state is buying that argument. I mean, the judge isn't. The judge is basically saying that, no, if, for example, and this is a really wild example, okay, can't take these things too far, but if he had coerced her into killing somebody else, then you could, if you read this liberally enough, say she's not guilty of murder, because the act that she committed was a part of a coercion by her human trafficker. But that doesn't apply here. She didn't kill somebody on his behalf. She killed him. And what this tells me is that he wasn't attacking her at the time she shot him. Her claim is that I'd had enough of the abuse, and I didn't want to face any more abuse. And I understand that perfectly well. Does that entitle somebody to shoot somebody? Well, I don't know. It doesn't look like it, though. I really don't think that this statute was meant for the case of being able to kill somebody who is trafficking you. I think it's really meant for people that are caught in crimes that were coerced by the human trafficker. I'm not a lawyer, and I may have this thing all fouled up, but you know what? I don't think I do. This all sort of makes sense to me now. This all makes sense to me now. I know why the case has been dragging for so long. And I kind of see why Chrystul has gotten herself into a little bit of trouble here. Could she have made a claim that he was in the act of attacking her at the time that she shot him? Maybe. Maybe the forensic evidence didn't support that argument, and so they shifted over to 1M. I don't know. But I just don't see her being successful with this argument. But then again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm a Monday morning quarterback at best. Like my video and subscribe to my channel. And don't forget to donate to Chrystul Kizer's defense fund if you have the money to spare. You know what? It doesn't matter if you even think she's innocent or guilty. She's entitled to the best defense possible. And if the evidence is there to convict her, well, okay then.